Welcome to Q Mind Body. My name is Darren, and in this podcast series, we talk about all things having to do with gay wellness, healing, and spirituality. And I like to cover a broad range of topics affecting gay men. And in this conversation, I want to talk about something many of us have experienced, and that is various forms of religious trauma and conversion therapy. The idea that you can pray the gay away, unsuccessfully, of course. And what happens after that? How do we heal from that kind of programming earlier in our life as we step out of the closet? I'm going to be talking to James Guay. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, well known for his work advocating in the state of California to put some limits on and bans on some ex-gay therapies, um, and really has done an amazing job protecting kids. But talking about what do we do, those of us who were raised in a religious environment or maybe tried to be something other than what we are, how do we heal from that moving forward? I'm going to put his website and other information in the show notes, but his website is livingmorefully.com. He also has a fantastic YouTube channel with lots of inspiring videos if you want to go a little more deeply on your journey. And you can also see him for private sessions as well. Finally, I will put links to all my information and to the Gay Wellness website, which is helping to support this video. And there you can find psychotherapists, massage therapists, yoga teachers, pretty much anyone who's going to make your life a little better and support you on your journey. It's a wonderful directory. With that, let's bring in James and talk about the effectiveness of conversion therapy. That's going to be a short conversation, James.
Right. Well, just so people understand what it is, conversion therapy is a discredited practice where the practitioners try to change the sexual orientation or gender identity, typically only from LGBTQ to straight and cisgender, and all the primary medical, mental health organizations have come out to say that it's harmful, likely, and ineffective, and malpractice, quite frankly.
Well, let's dive right into that, because I think this is you're bringing up probably the most important piece of this is that it has been discredited, and that not only does it not work, it's incredibly harmful, especially if it's done when you're a child. I'm wondering if you could say what you mean by discredited, because if you go to a website for an organization claiming to cure people of the gay or their gender identity issues, it can look very scientific. They present themselves as traditional psychotherapy when they're anything but. So when you say discredited, why do you say that? I mean, I agree with you, but
Absolutely. Yeah, well, it's important to be aware that the professional organizations that sort of support and govern mental health professionals, medical professionals, pediatric professionals have all come out, conclusively to state that this is ineffective, doesn't work, and is likely harmful. Not only that, but Kentucky just this week, 2 days ago, became the 28th state in the United States to protect LGBTQ youth from conversion therapy, and saying that those that are licensed are not able to give it because of the danger of harm.
yeah.
So, both on a governmental level and a professional organization level, and, people's lived experience of having gone through this, I think some people are surprised still that it exists in 2024, and, in 2023, Trevor Project sort of came out with a national survey for LGBTQ youth, and 15% of them said that they have still been, encouraged or actually had conversion therapy. So it's still happening, unfortunately, despite all these mental health professional organizations and state laws.
I'm wondering if you could just sort of define as best you can,
Hmm.
what this might look like, because I think there's
Hmm.
like treatment facilities in air quotes where
Right.
you would go almost like a drug rehab
Hmm.
to, but there's, I would say, less where you're doing pastoral care with your pastor, or
Mm.
joining a support group and trying to pray the gay away that way. That is a little
Hmm.
less. I wouldn't say it's good. It's not,
Right.
but a
Mm.
little less. They're not doing shock therapy or something. So I'm wondering
Right.
if you could just sort of paint a
Hmm.
picture of the sort of spectrum of,
Hmm.
you know, whatever.
What it looks
I
like
mean,
out there, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I think there's both kind of what appear to be more secular types of conversion therapy, that tends to be from a licensed mental health professional. I would say 99 times out of 100, maybe 100%, those professionals are motivated by religious beliefs, and provide some of their treatment in the context of those beliefs. But at least they feign to have sort of a professional license background, and some of them even, I think to your earlier point, market themselves on their websites or other places as providing, even specializing in LGBTQ population without saying that they're conversion therapists. But they're not providing LGBTQ affirmative psychotherapy. It's quite the opposite, right? They're trying to get people to change, to become
yeah,
straight or cisgender or those kinds of things. Now, so there's the secular piece ish, and then
yeah,
the religious piece is, like you said, pastoral counseling or ex-gay ministries. There was a very large clearinghouse, Exodus International, that existed for quite some time, that thankfully closed, over the last 10 years. And, but that used to be where they had conferences and, it gave referrals and recommendations to organizations and groups, across the country and internationally, actually, for
yeah.
people that wanted to change. So, yeah.
Um, One more follow-up question,
Hmm.
and then I want to talk about the more. I, it's both important, both preventing these individuals and organizations from hurting people, but
Mm.
also, like, many of us have experienced some version of this.
Yeah.
And how do you pick up the pieces? How do you find wholeness? And I
Mm.
want to get to that in just a second. But
Mm.
um, if you, as a licensed in marriage family therapist or a psychotherapist, I know there's different sort of counseling
Hmm.
um, formats or certifications one could engage in. But if
Sure.
you, say, as an LMFT, were
Hmm.
to provide um, conversion therapy, would
Mm.
you lose your license? Is it allowed, or is
Hmm.
it just frowned upon?
Well, in the states where it is, where LGBTQ youth are protected from this, where there's actual state laws that say that you can't provide this as a licensed clinician, you could lose your license. Someone that has been subjected to this can, kind of go after your
Yeah,
license. Go to the state board, file an ethics complaint against you. They can do an investigation, and ultimately that can happen. It's
yeah,
it's it's not very common, for a variety of different reasons. I think a lot of people that undergo this treatment have a lot of self-doubt, insecurities, trauma, healing, to
yeah,
then go forward and try and hold their individual therapist accountable for these kinds of things takes a lot of extra that often people don't have.
yeah. Um, well, let's talk about the healing process, because I know
Hmm.
you've worked with many, many people over the years.
Mm.
Um, I think all of us,
Yeah.
regardless of our religious background or whatever, have some level of internalized homophobia
Mm.
or some level of baggage from our past
Hmm.
in various forms.
Sure.
But people who have done various forms of conversion therapy
Hmm.
tend to have more. Maybe, maybe not. I'll let you
Hmm.
I'll let you speak to
Hmm.
that. But it definitely leaves its mark. It leaves a
Sure.
scar.
Hmm.
I'm wondering if there are some commonalities that you see
Hmm.
that are frequent, and how you start to unravel that with people as you work with them.
Sure, sure. Well, I mean, I think just to acknowledge that everyone's experience having gone through conversion therapy or ex-gay ministries or religious abuse or trauma, it can show up in so many different ways depending on the context, right? Did they fully believe it 100%? How long have they gone through it? How much did they hate themselves for this sort of thing?
I would think what age they went through it
What
too.
age? Absolutely, that has an impact. Yeah. And so, for some, this was a stepping stone to fuller acceptance of themselves and, not as much damage as someone else might have. And for others, it makes them even more likely to, suffer from depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidality, all those kinds of things, intimacy types of disorders. So, it really varies, but I think that the thing in common that you're pointing to is that there is this underlying belief and sense that something internal, this huge aspect of who we are, is somehow evil, not okay, sinful, an abomination, a mental illness. And whether someone experienced conversion therapy, ex-gay ministries or not, that has trickled down to society at large, right? And those religious beliefs have been sort of absorbed into the cultural discourse around these kinds of things, at least historically. I mean, still happening today, especially among transgender people. There's just so much animosity and vitriol and harm that's being done to our siblings
Yeah.
in our community. Yeah.
I'm wondering, this is sort of a generational question.
Hmm.
Um, I won't say your age because I'm a
I'm
gentleman, but
53.
I'm
I don't mind.
53 too.
Yeah,
But
woohoo.
we we didn't have the luxury of growing up with the internet, which can be a very
Right.
dark and scary place. But
Hmm.
I think for me, growing up in a small town and a religious home,
Mm.
I didn't have. I thought I was the only one. I
Yeah.
didn't. There weren't pride parades that I was aware of. There weren't.
Right.
There was one gay couple in the town, and they were mocked and ridiculed. So it wasn't
Mm.
exactly like I felt like I was the only one.
Right.
Do you see a generational shift? Like, even though some of this really toxic and harmful
Mm.
um, conversion therapy is still available and happening,
Right.
there is at least a counter narrative where people at least
Hmm.
can see that there are other people out there like them, that
I,
maybe there's another side to this story.
I think it's absolutely an aspect of how younger LGBT people can have a sense of resilience. Seeing that modeling, seeing people functioning and healthy and out there and accepted, does can do a great amount of mitigation for the hateful rhetoric that can come our way.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, is it things are certainly, in many ways much better, but I think also with that visibility and with the polarization of our politics, it also can make us more of a target. And so
Yeah.
whether, LGBTQ youth or younger people have experienced firsthand that kind of hatred and animosity, or they've seen it witnessed, or in some ways, I think that there is a fabric of like, just like in families, there's things that can be passed down from generation to generation that we kind of absorb some of those things and we have the opportunity of
Mm.
healing and doing the work our prior generation didn't do. I think some of that can be happening on a cultural aspect as well. And so even if they
Yeah.
haven't been directly impacted, I think our community as a whole and the healing that we've needed to do as a community is hopefully, further
Yeah.
happening among younger people.
Yeah. One of the things that and this is my anecdotal observation, so again, correct
Hmm.
me if I'm wrong. A lot of these reparative or conversion therapy
Mm.
practices sell false hope that you can you're a
Hmm.
cat, but you can become a dog, right?
Right.
And whereas legitimate psychotherapy or counseling,
Hmm.
it helps you to embrace who you are, what you are, how you were born to be.
Right.
And um, I think a lot of people, at least people I've talked to, like it comes up a lot in yoga where people start to arrive in their body, which can feel like a very hostile place because
Mm-hmm.
their body seemingly betrayed them by desiring things that they're not supposed to desire, and or looking the gender of the body not aligning with the internal gender, and
Hmm.
it can feel very hostile when you come to yoga. Um, and they can feel, I think, from what I've heard, very hopeless. Like I'm sort of stuck in this broken
Hmm.
frame,
Right.
and I know that's not true, and I know you know that's not true. But to somebody who,
Hmm.
say, called you for
Hmm.
therapy,
Right.
how would you start with them? Like, how do you start to
Hmm.
untie that knot of
Hmm.
like embracing who they are, embracing their
Hmm.
body, and
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and giving them hope, real legitimate hope, not the fake hope of
Right.
not being something that you are.
Right. Right. Fair enough. Yeah, it's a tough one because oftentimes, the therapist, my role has been in a position of power over the client in ways that have caused them legitimate harm, right? And so trusting someone else in this position is extremely difficult. And I acknowledge that right up front. It's like, look, I want to be here to encourage and support your real authenticity, your critical thinking skills. You get to determine sort of what is right or what feels authentic and real for you. I'm not going to dictate that for you, you know? And it's really helping people to, again, kind of deprogram from what oftentimes is a cult-like experience and learn to trust their own sense of intuition, their own sense of authenticity. And that takes time and trial and error. It's oftentimes conversion therapists will claim that someone's authentic self, I'm putting that in air quotes for your listeners, um, is really someone who hasn't fulfilled their heterosexual potential or their cisgender potential, that their most authentic self is actually straight or cisgender. And so it does this mind warp where it's like, well, who am I? Am I the person that, they're describing me to be? The worst parts of it? Am I just haven't healed from prior history or trauma or missed experiences? It really does play a mind game. And so I think
Yeah.
acknowledging where did the messages come from? What did you hear about yourself? And how much of that is external? How much of that has been internalized? I think those are some of the first
Hmm.
steps.
Um, I think another piece of this that I'd love for you to speak to is
Hmm.
um, we tend to, as humans, see the world in black and white, but I think
Hmm.
that many people who are raised in families that are very religious or conservative,
Hmm.
they love their families or they have a
Hmm.
deep sense of spirituality
Hmm.
that is tethered to this toxic element. And
Right.
they feel like they have to give up their
Hmm.
spirituality or give up their family. And sometimes,
Hmm.
well, I would say sometimes you do need to cut loose people that aren't supporting you, but there are
Hmm.
many forms of spirituality. There are many, say, Christian churches that are welcoming.
Sure.
But I think that can be like if I give up on this quest to be a straight guy or a cis guy,
Hmm.
I lose everything.
Hmm.
And I feel like that's a legitimate loss. There's a
Hmm.
grief that
Hmm.
happens there.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I mean, I know everybody's different, but
Hmm.
just in general, if you have any thoughts about that, how you both acknowledge the good that they
Hmm. Hmm.
experience while
Yeah.
also saying, and this one piece was really toxic.
Yeah, yeah. I'm loving this dialogue. These are great questions and insights you're having, and not something I hear very often when I'm interviewed around this topic. So thank you. It feels more
Ah,
three-dimensional, holistic,
I try.
right? So
I
yeah,
prefer chess over checkers. What can I say?
there you go. Yeah, a little bit more, the complexity of the human experience here.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, yeah, I think it's really important to acknowledge that there can be core values that are in sync or in common, like compassion, like, if someone's, coming up, brought up in a Christian belief system, seeing the life of Jesus be non-judgmental and compassionate towards people that were societal rejects, or be really pissed off and angry at religious hypocrisy, or there's certain characteristics and qualities that can be really useful that we can integrate and move forward, whether we adopt all of the religious beliefs that we were taught to begin with or not, And so sifting out what feels right and true for us versus messages that don't feel life affirming or feel, harmful in some ways, that can be, it can be a both and, that it's
yeah,
like you said, it's not black or white. We can integrate aspects that work for us. We can adopt new things that work better, and that's a process of healing as well from this experience.
yeah. I don't know if this is off topic. It may be,
Hmm.
but it's a little bit about my own experience. But that also
Hmm.
many of the people that I've worked with over the years,
Hmm.
um, practices like non-attachment, like in
Hmm.
dealing with family members.
Hmm.
Some family members are so toxic and abusive, you really do need to stay away. But some are, they just have their process that they're going through.
Hmm.
And I think in my early years, when I was just like this bitter, angry young man,
Hmm.
newly out of the closet saying, screw you if you don't accept everything about me, you're disowned and you're an ignorant homophobe.
Right.
But as I, through Buddhism and yoga and my
Hmm.
own personal practices, I started practicing non attachment and saying, I can be at peace, even
Hmm.
if this person in my life who I genuinely care for is not there yet.
Right.
And what I found is when I stopped yelling at them and stopped shaming them for being
Hmm.
ignorant homophobes,
Hmm.
they took the time to listen and to get
Hmm.
to know me as I am.
Hmm.
And now most of them are maybe not as woke as I'd like, but certainly far more welcoming and
Hmm.
accepting. I feel very
Yeah.
blessed to have the family and
Nice.
friends that I have from my younger years.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I'm wondering if you have any experience with that as well. Like
Hmm.
it's healing our relationship with our mothers, our fathers, our
Hmm.
cousins, our teachers, our priests, our rabbis, whoever, like
Hmm.
may have said and done some awful things
Right.
and possibly well meaning at the same time, which is
Mhm.
cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, it's really complicated, right? It's one of those things that I find, I mean, certainly in my personal life as well, having been brought up in a very religious environment, dad's a pastor. I went through conversion therapy myself as an adolescent into early adulthood. And so it's recognizing that there can be these developmental stages where, first of all, we might need to exist in the land of anger and rage at what has been legitimately done to us that was so harmful. There's,
Yeah.
I think that there's a space for that. I think far too many times people do like a religious or psychological bypass over the anger
Yeah.
stage. And they're like, let me just get to Zen, please, and peace. But
Yeah.
oftentimes we have to go through that stage to recognize that what was done
Yeah.
to us wasn't okay, that we need to assert our needs and set boundaries and protect ourselves in ways that are helpful. But hopefully we don't land there for the rest of our lives. Hopefully there is a place where once we feel a greater sense of self and security in ourselves, that we can have a different kind of conversation with people that are able to as well, right? I'm
Yeah.
not, I know you weren't as well recommending that people have continued conversations or relationships with people who are just outright mean and vitriolic and aren't open to discussion. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to, like you said, be woke or, be advocating for LGBTQ rights or anything like that. But if there can be
Hmm.
a dialogue that deepens understanding and care from multiple sides of the equation, that can be very, very healing in and of itself too. So not always
Yeah.
possible, but nice when it can exist.
Yeah. My mom has always been supportive, but I
Mm,
think early on struggled because she worried that I wasn't going to
hmm.
be safe or that
Sure.
people would be mean to me. I'm like,
Right.
probably. It's
Hmm.
already happened and
Hmm.
I don't care. I mean, it's not that I don't
Right.
care, but I'm just like, it's not worth going back in the closet for, that's for sure.
Sure.
Um, and I went on with my life and I adopted my son and
Mm,
is a single gay dad, which was one of the best
hmm.
things I ever did. And I
Mm,
had this moment where we were marching with the LGBTQ plus families in the Pride Parade, and my mom
hmm.
was visiting, and she's like, "Can I march with you?"
Oh,
It's like,
sweet.
oh.
Yeah. Come
And I thought,
on.
like, how amazing is that? Like, if you
Yeah.
just do your own healing and take those
Hmm.
courageous steps,
Yeah.
you know. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm making
Yeah.
myself. Usually, I make my guests cry. I don't usually make myself cry. Shame
All
on me.
good.
Shame.
All feelings are welcome here.
All feelings are welcome.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
Mm,
the cliff notes of this conversation is that if you're living your life
hmm.
with like, did you see Game of Thrones where the Walk of Shame, the famous Walk of
Hmm.
Shame?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. I feel
Hmm.
like many of us are walking through life. We've come
Mm,
out of the closet and we've moved on, but we still have that nun ringing a bell behind us saying shame, shame.
hmm.
And
Hmm.
somehow we need to like deal with that. Even
Yeah.
though it's behind us, it's still following us.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
I,
yeah,
I do think that
go ahead.
that's like, I, I, I I think if we're doing it right, we're having a lifelong relationship with ourselves where we're trying to improve it, hopefully from birth till death or beyond, if you believe in that, that there's this, um, that the more conscious, the more aware that we can be of that shame, those judgments, the inner critic, however it shows up, that if we can respond to it with greater radical acceptance of what is, instead of trying to force it to go away or deny or minimize that it exists to begin with, the more that we can lean into it, see it, be with it, not let it freak us out so much, and then also provide some curiosity instead of judgment. Some like, where does this come from? Why am I telling me these things? What does it sound like? Where does it show up? What does it get in the way of? And then infuse a lot of self-compassion, a lot of kindness. Like, how would we
Yeah,
respond to a best friend who's saying these same things, that we're saying to
yeah.
ourselves? How can we show up for ourselves more?
Um, James, you're amazing. Do you realize I was
Mm,
thinking as I was getting ready for this conversation that we've known each other for like 30 years.
a long time. I remember lots of yoga classes with you and conversations with you, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always you. There's different kinds of yoga students. They're all beautiful, but there's some people that come into like a yoga class,
Mm,
and you can tell they're on a path. They're
mm.
taking their miracle grow, and that they're going to
Right.
make a real Steve Jobs words, a real dent in the universe, make a
Mm,
difference, and on a healing level. And some do it by teaching headstand, and some doing it by advocating for queer kids, and some do it
mm,
um, by holding space in a therapy office. But you've done a lot, and
mm.
yeah, thank you.
Of course. I
I'm
appreciate
glad we
that.
bumped into each other all those years ago. And every time I see your
Absolutely.
name in the paper associated with
Uh,
like advocating for these kids,
yeah.
it just warms my heart. So thank you.
You're very welcome, and thank you for all the things that you're putting out into the world too. We all have
Yeah,
our ways of hopefully trying to improve and help people to, understand themselves and heal and grow and, make a better world,
yeah,
especially in the midst of all this chaos. So,
yeah. Okay. Well, a few quick things. James Gay. Livingmorefully.com is James' website, and he's a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's got an amazing YouTube channel that I will link to, so you can check out some of his videos. But I also wanted to check in with you, James, about
Mhm.
how people could connect with you more. I know you're based out of
Mm.
LA.
Uh-huh.
I'm still going to try and convince you to move to the Bay Area, back to the Bay Area.
Right.
But for those of us aren't not lucky enough to be your neighbor, to live somewhere else in the world who might want to work with you,
Right.
do you do online things beyond YouTube, online
Yes.
counseling or whatever?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was in San Francisco for 20 years, grew up Southern California 20 years, then back here the last 10 years, 13 years or so. So yeah, I'm 100% online actually. Telehealth. This is my background. At the beginning of the pandemic, gave up my office and clients wanted to continue to meet this way. So it's anyone in the state of California. That's the state I'm licensed to practice in, can schedule an appointment with me. If you go to my website, there's an
Yeah.
appointments tab. You can look at my calendar, schedule that way, and go from there.
Yeah. Do you, I know some therapists offer a free consultation or
Mm,
something like that. Is that
mm.
something you offer?
I'm happy to talk to people for a good, 10, 15 minutes, answer any questions they might have, see if, it feels like the right fit or whatever before scheduling a first appointment. But otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, my hope is that after listening to this conversation, they're
Mm,
pretty confident that you're someone that can
mm.
be a guide for them.
I appreciate that.
Um, if you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share. Feel free to follow us on YouTube. We have a Facebook group where you can connect with other Q Mind Body yogis. Of course, Gay Wellness is a great website where you can connect with healers of all stripes. And I am starting to do some online yoga classes for gay men that will always be sliding scale, no one turned away because of money. So I will post some information on that and my other work as well. James, it was so good to talk to you, and I would love
Mm.
to have you back on sometime. We can talk about a different topic,
Sounds good to me. Thank you. Appreciate
cookie
it.
recipes or something a little less light.
Right. Hello.
Yeah. We'll see you in the next episode.